Hello, everyone. This is a Call to Actions Radio, a new genre in radio. Today is June 1st, 2015, and your hosts today are myself, Kimberly Schultz, Eugene Irvin, and Bobby Vaughn Jr. Our guest today is Scott, and he's going to be sharing some intimate detail related to the telecommunications industry on a variety of subjects that we'll be asking about today. Before we dig in, I just wanted to kind of point everybody in the direction of a website that you can pull up to search the antennas in your area, antennas, details, and towers. It's www.antenna, A-N-T-E-N-N-A, search.com. And what that you can do there is put your address in, and it will populate two different results, antennas and towers, and you can view within your area, within a 3-mile radius. I did that with us earlier today, and we had 69 towers and 229 antennas situated around where we live. Now, these are various types of antennas with different types of things going on with them, and we can get into the details on that later if we'd like, but Scott, what we would like to cover today is to focus on the different types of antennas, what their particular functions are, their shapes are. We'll focus on kind of where they're being put into. They're putting on street light poles. They're putting them on top of towers, sides of buildings. We even saw one on the back of a stop sign the other day. So they're putting them pretty much everywhere, and even hiding them in fake-looking trees, steeples, flagpoles, you name it. So we're trying to figure out exactly why we need all this stuff, what is going on with it, what kind of radiation or some kind of energy that's coming out of these things, and could they potentially be dangerous to people's health. And then we want to focus on, once we identify what's in our area that could be a potential hazard, what do we do with that? How do we protect ourselves? So that was a lot to throw out there at once, but we'd like to get a little bit of background. First of all, thank you for sharing some time with us today.
Thank you very much.
And go ahead and let us know a little bit about your background, and we'll dig in from there.
Well, my background started a very long time ago. I was probably about 3 years old, and I started climbing, probably younger than that, and climbing to the ceiling of the bathroom, little things like that. I started climbing all the time from the time I was a child. I originally started in the tree service industry. I was climbing, tree topping, servicing, and from that, it just naturally led into climbing towers. And I've spent probably 22 plus years working at heights, and over 17 years in the telecom industry now. And started off from the early stages of the networks, where there was one cable to one antenna on the original 2G network. That was shortly after the bag phones came out. So been doing it for quite some time. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a bunch of letters behind my name, but more valuable than that is hands-on experience and learning and progressing through the industry. The way the training happens within the industry is once a person's hired, they grow through the industry by regularly upgrading, training. The companies keep the employees by upgrading their skill levels, from a safety course to using the test sets to working in the design industry to management. And I was stepped out on my own recently, and I'm working as a private contractor to one of the world's second largest equipment providers. So there's a bit of history there in learning how well the networks and operation systems work, everything from cellular across North America. Spent some time down in Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, way back in the day. A lot of traveling there, all across Western Canada. Cellular is just one portion of the wireless, of course, and I'm in Western Canada right now, where I've worked on everything from the police systems to ECOM 911, radio stations, but the majority of the populace uses cell phones. Therefore, that's where the majority of the work is. And what was VoiceStream at one time, it's of course been taken over by other companies in the U.S., in Canada, TELUS, Bell, Rogers, the whole works, worked on every system possible on that. Now, what we need to understand in looking at some of these systems, excuse me, is what are transmitters, what are receivers, what kind of power output do they have, what kind of frequency ranges are they dealing with. Not all frequency is bad, of course, because simply the human voice runs at 30 to 3,000 hertz. That's what we hear. It's a frequency. The colors that we see in daily life are a frequency. The kinds we got to think about in this discussion is the kinds that are potentially harmful, ones that we need to have a good look at and have discussions about. The reason people wear these little glasses when they go suntanning is because the ultraviolet rays are right on the border of the ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. So that is potentially harmful to the eyes. That's why they got to wear the glasses all the time. Oh, and by the way, I'm supposed to call it emissions, not radiation. That's what my opinion is supposed to be. So I'm told. But you showed a picture of one on a stop sign. That kind right there you'll see often at intersections, above stoplights, many places. Differences on those ones, because it's a Yagi type, count the number of spikes on it, and that'll tell you the type of frequency it is, and those are receive only. You can walk right up to it, cover it up, put a bag over it, wrap it in aluminum foil. You'll kill it, of course, and it won't work, so don't do it. But it is a receive only, and it does not have any outgoing transmission. The reason you'll see these at stoplights is traffic cameras. They send it from where the camera is to a receiver, and it goes probably underground to a fiber system and back to a data recording center. Whether it's activity at traffic lights, whether it's transmissions from a hospital to another place, these ones that we are talking about are receivers, like you're showing on the stop sign, the little Yagi. There's cell phone antennas in all the odd places, even in church steeples. I've seen them myself. The reason these are being hidden away, what my opinion is on this, and told to have, is that the public doesn't want to see an obnoxiously odd-shaped, large panel antenna. Now, the term panel antenna is important, and it has all the cables coming off the bottom of it. It can be gaudy looking with all these loose cables, so they hide it in a shroud. Most often, the shrouds look like smokestacks. You wouldn't know it at all unless you knew what you're looking for. Big, round fiberglass tubes, and there are hundreds of them. I'm near the Vancouver area, and just in the Vancouver area alone, I'll bet you there's 50, 60, 70 sites, all with these two tubular covers on them, and we call little China hats on top to keep the rain off. They're all for the purpose of disguising an antenna, to keep it out of the public sight for multiple reasons. They don't want people complaining about it. It's on top of hospitals, residential homes, the old folks' homes, schools, you name it. Where the popular, or where the people use it the most, is the density of antennas. Go ahead if you've got any questions on that. I'm going to look up the other info I have.
Well, I just wanted to say a couple of things about that. I mean, obviously, the emissions of these are a primary focus of ours. And when we do see some, for example, like we see them on schools down here in Texas, and they haven't worried about this being a gaudy thing at all. I guess my real question, Scott, off the bat would be, what are the industry standards that they teach you guys about as far as human exposure warnings? And have you seen those be in violation of any sort?
I've seen it and had experience with it myself. I had to evacuate a crew off a rooftop site because as we were physically working on it, one by one, the crew members started feeling disoriented, very hungry feeling of the stomach, nauseous. And I started picking up that not one, but two, and then a third. And I'm like, get everyone out of here, shut it down, left the roof. And I voiced my opinion, and it upset a few people. The standard is, it's a little hard to describe, but picture the base of where you can walk up to an antenna at a wall, a structure, or something of the sort. If you measure out 6 feet out and 6 feet up, the angle of the broadcast must not interfere within that zone at a 45-degree angle, which means the antenna can be about 12 feet off the ground, and as long as 6 feet away, you're not within that 45-degree angle zone, it is considered a safety zone. Kind of odd sometimes because even after years of experience, I can't necessarily pick out the power density that the antenna is broadcasting. I can look at the antenna.
That leads into my next question. Not to interject, but we saw in October of last year where the Wall Street Journal reported that 1 in 10 cell phone towers in the United States is in violation of the human exposure limits. We have different limits. We have occupational, and we have just the general populace exposure warnings. And you're saying now that you have a difficulty in discerning what those are, even after 22 years of experience.
Now, just so people who are listening, let's understand it better. If you go to a live hydro line, there's a limit that a worker can go close to it because he's trained to go to a live energized hydro line. Same thing with RF energy. Someone like me who's trained on it, I know how to approach it so that I'm not within a hot zone, but I can come right up to within a certain limit. Somebody who's not trained does not know how to approach it and can put themselves at risk in coming up to working at it. Here's the limits between a occupational and general public right there. Now, the majority of all the antennas, when I come up to them and I can look at them, I can tell by the labeling on it. I can tell just by experience the type of antenna it is, and usually I can tell the type of frequency that's on it. Therefore, I can deduce by that what a type of power density would be coming out of it, just by experience.
Are you privy to the knowledge? Because to my knowledge, some of these towers do pulse, and at key times they will emit a higher discharge than at other times. And is that something that you're aware of?
Put it this way, I was working on a site in a populated area, and we were doing an upgrade. While doing the upgrade, we ran a program that's a 2x2 MIMO system as opposed to a 4x4 MIMO, which means the amount of cables attached to the antenna powered by a radio system. Existing operating, it was 2 cables per antenna, which can handle X amount of capacity. So at about 3 o'clock is the time all the kids get out of school. And let me just turn my phone off at the same time. At the same time, all the kids get out of school, they all start texting, calling mom and dad, and it crashed the entire site. So while we're talking about that, about whether it pulses, I wouldn't say pulses. I would say it goes by the amount of usage. It can raise the power levels by the amount of usage comes out of it. If it was the old paging style antenna, that's what we call a pulsing system. With an RF meter, I can be standing by it reading a complete 0. A paging system fires up and operates to send the signal out. Within 5 feet of it, it can go 14 times the human explosion limit, blasting out of a paging antenna. That's why I'm glad those are being dismantled and they're pretty much out of service, because there is no early warning system on those ones.
I see. Oh, that's interesting. And do you work with mobile ad hoc networks in any capacity?
That's interesting. How would you describe that? Like mobile networks?
A mobile ad hoc is essentially what we would call a trunking radio. It's certainly what they call them in different intelligence and military sources in their circles. And what they do is it's a different. It's a heterogeneous modeling system, meaning there are many different types of components in which all can receive and transmit frequencies. They juggle these frequencies at the speed of light, essentially, in order to keep them, to make a seamless transmission, but be using many different components in order to get that done. Does that make sense?
That's actually used in shopping malls, whereas inside the shopping mall is many different antennas, and they can be different types of antennas. Oftentimes they look like smoke detectors on the ceiling of the shopping mall, or similar to an exit sign. These are all interconnected to a central unit that goes to the outside of the shopping mall to a microwave dish that sends and receives its transmission signal from a main source. So in that case, definitely.
Are those line of sight? Is that big microwave drum on the outside? Is that going to be a line of sight transmission and receiving, or?
That will be sending and receiving, and that is very pinpointed and has almost no spillage of RF at all. Reason because of that is, if there was spillage off that, it would cost the carrier money, and money talks. So with the microwave dishes, we joke about calling it a laser. It's very pinpointed and powerful in the area it points to. And remember back in school when we did graphs, you have your graph of your vertical and your horizontal and all your lines on there. Say you want to shoot for your number 5. Well, it's invisible to someone who's aligning the dish. But we move it left and right, up and down, back and forth until we get the peak hot zone, bang on what we would mentally call the number 5. We're bang on it. At the other end, they do the exact same thing. And we get our calculated power signal maximized, which says we're not missing it by any left or right, up or down. We're bang on. The carriers like this because they would rather turn the power down and keep all the energy confined where they can, because that means money to them. Now, just don't go joking around and walking in front of those things. They range anywhere from 5.5, 6 gigahertz to, on most transmissions, up to 38, but occasionally higher than 38 gigs.
All right. There are obviously various styles of towers and antenna. One thing I am wondering about is, let me tell you something. Kimberly and I were walking down to the ocean, and we've seen the construction of a tower with the typical triangular style with about 9 different antennas on it. And here about 3 months later, it's been deconstructed and is gone. And I was wondering if there are different factions or companies or people that rent towers for certain purposes.
Definitely there is. Oftentimes we call them cows. That's where you have a shelter at the bottom. The radio room is always nicknamed a shelter, by the way. So there's a shelter on the ground, often on a trailer unit. The one you're talking about doesn't sound the same, but let's move into this. It's called a cow, communication on wheels. They'll roll it up, pop up the tower, pull out the guy wires sometimes if you're going to extend it a little higher, They'll do it for a large event, an exhibition show, a trade center event, big outdoor concerts. They'll roll it up, pop this up, have it operational, take it down, move it away. Military will use it for training exercises. When they bring a large number of people in for training, they all want to have communication. It really comes down to, if there's going to be a large population of people in an area or moving to an area, that population is a mobile farm. And the best way to farm them, get something over there they all want. And they pop up another tower there, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry nowadays wants to use a smartphone. So as long as they can pop this up wherever the populace goes, more money goes in the pocket.
When you say more money goes in the pocket, just by putting that tower up and people using that tower, that the company that's renting it is making money off of that?
Absolutely.
Huh.
Every single call that it goes through, every single text, voice, email, it costs the operators, or it costs the end user, it costs them on their cell phone bill. One way or another, everybody has to pay for that. And whoever moves the cell sites, whether it's a portable one like one of the cows, whether it's a one that you build, it might cost them $30,000 to move a cow into place for 2 days. Within that 2 days, the amount of usage of all the people on there, they'll probably make $100,000 off the people in there, and there you go. The operators and carriers make more money. Oftentimes, these are built when cities are expanding into different areas, when there's going to be a new boardwalk put up in an area, a new pier going out to the beach, because there's going to be people there. So the next thing, the carriers want to get in there. And when you say about renting, they may build a permanent tower. They may use the building and start on it. The building will get a rental space lease from the carrier to put these antennas on the building. Whoever the owner is, whether the owner lives in the building, is a property management company, they'll get a lease fee from the carrier for anything from $15,000 to $50,000 for the year. This is why people allow it to be on their buildings, because they get paid for it. On the towers, they'll put a tower up, and you'll see one triangle on the top, 3 sides of 3 sectors, and it's just one level. You'll come back in a few months, it'll have three or 4 levels on there. That's because the tower, whoever the owner is, will rent out space to a new carrier. So you may have Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T all stacked up on one tower, and it's cheaper for all the carriers. It's better for the public because they see one tower instead of 3, and they all can now compete on that same footprint of space.
All right. Yeah, there are 2 different types of towers, being registered and unregistered. Would you be able to go into details on the differences between registered and unregistered? Because I've seen a large majority of these are unregistered.
I'm not too sure how much I can say on that, because oftentimes, even the unregistered ones will eventually be registered, but this is being built so fast and so many different layers that it may not be registered at the same time. There will be there'll be a page come out that'll have a listing of towers. It may be from 2014. Well, from the time this registry list came out until now, there could be 500 more sites being put up in California. Who knows? Now, each one can be an upgrade to an existing site. The upgrade doesn't have to be registered if the original one is registered. And when you say, what was your original, what you mentioned, there was 67 or 69 sites?
69.
69 towers.
Mm-hmm. That's in 3
And how
mile
many
radius.
antennas? Well, right off that, when I look at it, there's probably over 450 antennas on there, not the 220 some that shows in the registry. Because on every site, usually, now you're talking in California area, right?
Yes.
Okay, this is a more densely populated area. Each sector will probably have 2 at minimum, but most commonly 4 antennas. So if you have a site, let's say 69 sites times 12 antennas is 828 antennas right there. Now, in with that, one cell site will have multiple layers of frequencies. You'll see in a panel antenna, they're rectangular box. It's usually about 18 inches, 24 inches wide, 54 inches long, and at the bottom of it is going to be a series of cables going into it. You're going to have usually two frequencies on the newer antennas, and the older ones are going to have probably single frequencies. So when you have 4 antennas facing one direction, it's most commonly you'll have 3 frequencies coming out of these 4 antennas.
And what is the differences in those the frequencies there, Scott?
Originally, way back in the day, we built everything as kind of goes way back. TDMA, the time duplex matrix system. That's old. That's gone. There's the 800 band, 1900 band, and 2100 band. But the 2100 is being split now between 1700 and 2200. 800 being the low band CDMA or GSM networks. Now, in the mix here, in some areas, it's a 700 band, which is now going into the LTE, the long-term evolution. The lower the band, the further the range, because as the wave pattern works, the lower the number, the longer the wave is. The higher the number, the shorter the distance that the wave is. So a 700 band will reach a much further range, but less penetration. Whereas the 1900 and 2100 are shorter range, but a better penetration. Walk into your elevator, keep on your phone, all of a sudden it dies. Because it doesn't penetrate through the concrete walls very well.
And that brings me to a question about terahertz with you, Scott. Do you work with terahertz at all?
Terahertz? Terahertz is a pretty high frequency, not commonly used in public communications. But go ahead, what's your question about it?
Well, I'm just curious as to what you've seen added to the existing public band or piggybacking off of the public band. You know, maybe one of these guys who wants to come in and rent a tower site maybe has the option to use terahertz. Is that a possibility, and have you seen any of that?
Going into the terahertz range, no, because as far as public communication goes, it hasn't been going anything above, for cellular, nothing has been above 3,000 megahertz. The highest has been 2,600 megs. Microwave transmission, which is the backbone system to communicate from tower to tower to tower, when fiber isn't used, that can go up to, like I mentioned, 38 gigahertz, but not into the terahertz range unless you're talking military satellites, and those communications, they're a little different.
Right. So what can you tell us about the role that the fiber optic system really plays in communication, Scott?
Fiber optic system is becoming more and more the standard. I haven't been down in western U.S. working down there, but I have seen many oftentimes fiber being replacing microwave. So how all the cell sites work, whether you're off in the central prairies or if you're in a mountainous region, it has to get communication from somewhere. There's nerve centers all over that are the command centers for the carriers. They send and receive the signal. They go to a city, it has a central office for the wire line, which goes to everyone's houses. Somehow, the cellular has to connect to people's houses so we can have full communication. It's either by the microwave, which is the backhaul system, or the fiber optic, which takes the communication directly from the shelter as a straight feed back to the central office. The reason fiber is so much better nowadays is it's buried underground, it's protected, it won't get damaged except if a backhoe digs it up, and usually this is all marked anyways. The microwave system is susceptible to damage on the dish itself, ice fall, smashing the dish, fade in the rain. Really heavy rainfall causes a fade in the communication, and water getting into the system. You get water in the system, it's all bad. It shuts down. So the fiber is the better way to go, and it becomes the entire backhaul.
And, you know, is there any chatter, I mean, amongst you guys, maybe as workers or executives or any of you guys? I mean, obviously, somehow this stuff is going to affect consciousness. It's going to affect the bioelectric field of the human body. And do you feel like the laws that are in place are more kind of structured around corporate profits than they are kind of, you know, human health concerns?
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
I appreciate that. Certainly, we would say the same thing.
I would like to mention that we have a friend in San Diego whose mother passed because of brain cancer due to, I can't remember exactly what was in the area, but it was too close to her home. And there was a lawsuit started, and it has been going on for several years now. And there was a anti-cell tower lawyer that took this up. I think he's out of New York, and basically was, you know, saying that we were going to take this up, and it was going to be a national lawsuit. He has since basically no longer returning her phone calls, no longer returning her emails. The corruption in these places, you know, is massively questionable. I mean, I don't know how they're gagging these lawyers from taking on these lawsuits about people that have hazards. And this goes back to the FCC in 1996 passing a law where you could not use health concerns from stopping a tower from going up. I mean, that's
exactly, and that brings us to exactly what's actually going on this day. To put things in context, today is the day, this morning, that Section 215 of the Patriot Act has expired, which was actually kind of implemented at this time that you're talking about, came back in 1996, in which the FCC mandated all this different set of criteria to the FCC here, to different telecommunications companies here in the United States, all of which was unconstitutional. Now, very interestingly, the deadline in which this stuff had to be met was October of 2001, and some people would definitely conjecture that does have a tie into the attacks of September 11th. And when we look at this, you know, when we talk about these things, mind control is the context in which we are dealing with these devices. We have understood that these devices have been weaponized and it's been incorporated into the existing infrastructure in a variety of different ways, and this is a progressing technology. And what we know about fiber optics is, Scott, that it has been shown the frequencies of fiber optics and Wi-Fi has the ability to affect nanoparticulates that are in our bodies. This is something that it's certainly not a matter of opinion. This is something that we have seen across the board, basically nailed down through definitive university and military studies. And, you know, the way in which this system, from my perspective, operates is under the guise of communications when ultimately it serves that function, but also it is a mask for this massive mind control system. And so I know that there's a lot of stuff upcoming and the weeks to come with this. And typically when they make a major shift in the system, this will kind of be essential that they follow throughout the entire system from my experience. And, I mean, can you talk to us a little bit about that, Scott, about what's up and coming and what it looks like, how this is progressing?
Yeah, because here's where it gets interesting. My opinion, what I'm told to have, and my opinion that I do have, kind of splits. Now, it kind of differs on more than one area, though, because on the fiber optic side, it operates between 850 nanometers and 1310 nanometers. Other operational systems are 1550. It's light. It operates in a light system only. That's all good. That's fiber on its own. What's up and coming for the future of communications gets really trippy. There's a new frequency coming out that's 600 band or 600 megahertz. And the auction is coming out, I believe, either end of this year or early 2016. I don't remember the exact date. So the 600 megahertz band is coming out. That's getting to be a little bit lower and lower than I actually like. And it's beneficial for people who want to make money off it because the 600 band is a very stable frequency. It reaches a long ways. It can carry a lot of data on. It's jumping to the high side as well, going higher and higher into the 21, 25, and 2600 megahertz band. And the long-term evolution is going faster and faster. Now, what I've done a lot of work on recently is the 4G LTE networks. That's only has about a year and a half left of building that, and we're going to be jumping into a new stage. Because every time one level of technology is completed, there's already another one designed that's being implemented next. And that's the 4.5 leading into the 5G. Now, when I say G, to really understand what this means, originally, first generation was a tower, 6 antennas, and a big bag phone or a car phone that you'd carry. And the bag phones was like damn near carrying a car battery around. So when it moved from this to the second generation, everything was replaced. All the tower systems, all the handsets, and everything to make it a second generation. 3G, same thing. The entire tower network was replaced. The antennas were replaced, the cabling systems, all the handsets that people use in their personal daily lives. All had to be replaced. 4G LTE, we're now into the smartphone stage. This is all being replaced. And it's being upgraded more and more, faster and faster. 5G, we can't jump into it yet. Because into the 5G network, the handsets are still being sold for the 4G. The transition is really big because all the radio sets are now going on the top of the towers. No longer are the radios in the shelter, which poses another thing I'll bring up later. With all the tower top radios now, they're going to be replaced eventually with it's still in the process of a different type of communication system, which uses fiber optic to the radio in white light and dark light. These two converge, making a hologram inside the radio unit itself, which at different levels of light and dark can store and process information 1,000 times faster than we have now on our fast smartphones that running on 4G LTE. So down the road, we're going to have, whether it's a smartphone, whether it's your self-driven car, whether it's your wristband that like they have now that shines up your arm and it's all soft touch there. It's going into interconnected machine and human to the stage where you will have entire downtown areas of cities self-operating. Cars that won't crash because they're connected to the matrix. It senses where the next car is in front of you. It tells when to change the traffic light by the amount of cars that are driving down the road. If you have 20,000 people all driving down I-5 at once through the middle of Seattle, you're going to want to have that traffic flowing nice and steady. Well, when your side arteries start clogging up, you need to bring them back onto I-5 or whatever your highway is. This is all going to be operated by the matrix.
Yeah,
as
this is all
already
plugged into a cloud interface. And you're right, Scott. This is exactly where this technology is heading. And interestingly, there has been a class action lawsuit filed against Toyota, GM, and I think Honda in regards to this, as far as the technology is standing now, and that these cars that we have right now that are able to be driven by human beings are susceptible to being hacked. And this is obviously a major concern when we have a self-driving car and not only the privacy issues, but number one, the safety issues that arise because of this are through the roof. And so, what really, I think you really kind of piqued my interest here about the holographic aspect of this into these nodes. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the technology, where it's coming from, and what kind of contractors and stuff are in on that, and where you see that going? And also, well, if you think about it, if you want to tie in how you see human consciousness being able to interface with this type of technology.
That's where I have a strong opinion. Hang on one sec.
Excellent. Very good.
Now, one of the people who are really, really pushing for change, pushing for technology, pushing for cutting-edge changes in the world to make it a better place, air quotes, Huawei. Huawei is a Chinese company that produces a large amount of equipment for the world's communication needs. The designer who first came up with the LTE network, one of the main founders, also is designing the 5G network, which uses the holographic imagery, which can lead speeds, wireless speeds, to the handset of 1 gigabyte per second. And in the end run, the goal is to have 10 gigs per second from each base station. Now, each base station being a sector. So you have a sector facing down the highway. And small cells or mini cells is the key word of today's industry. Because all the big cells have been made. The mini cells are what's being built now to fill in all the voids between all this, and down the road they can be turned into these holographic radio sets. I don't even know what they're called yet because they're not being developed. But where is all this speed coming from is my question. The radio itself can produce it. That's not a problem. I know how these radios work. They can pump out the energy. They can process fast enough. Where's the backhaul? We talked about microwave. We talked about fiber. We talked about the cloud system. How is this all going to interconnect? That's what you're getting at. Because the mini cells are going to be on every second light post. They're going to be on every block of every building. They're going to be in awnings, in what looks like mailboxes. We already have them just about 2 blocks down the road from my house, one way, 3 blocks the other way, 5 blocks the other way. They're all on the poles, the wood poles already. It looks about the size of a fridge, and at the top of the antennas. All these mini cells. The radio unit won't look much different in the future. Oh, it may not be quite as square. It might be 10 pounds heavier or lighter, but it's still going to be a radio unit. Well, how that processing comes into play now is that the mini cells, they're close enough together that the broadcast from one antenna can be picked up from the second antenna, so they can all see each other. They can all talk to each other, which means once this is built in a city, there's an absolute blanket of sites that all talk to each other. They can lead traffic through an entire city by, I don't dare say the word thinking, but it's processing data really fast, faster than anyone else could possibly think humanly, because it's a selected amount of data that's being processed in a certain mathematical calculations, and that scares me.
Yeah, I'd like to bring that up real quick, Scott.
Well, tell us why that scares you real quick, if you could.
Because once you have a mass blanket of sites that can talk to each other at will, that leads me into having concerns about AI, artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that, personally, I don't want to be involved with, just because I don't want something that's not human guiding my life.
Well,
you nailed it. Yeah, you nailed it right there. And so this is a major issue that the human civilization is going to have to contend with. And I think that what a lot of people aren't aware of right now, and that includes people in the communications industry, I just want to go ahead and get that out there, is that ultimately there has been an artificial intelligence of just unprecedented levels as far as the public is aware of, that has been essentially at the core of the internet since its inception. And this is something that has caused a huge stir in the defense and intelligence community, and needs to basically leak its way out into the public, because this is a major deal. And ultimately, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a self-aware entity that is smarter than we are, that can communicate with our infrastructure at the speed of light, and do the job of, God knows how many people at one time as this self-aware entity. And it also ties right back into these mobile ad hoc networks. Essentially what you're describing is a managed system, which is mobile ad hoc networks. And what they've done down here in the U.S. is they've used this for the emergency broadcasting network, which has been upgraded into these managed. And so they use these in battlefield communications. Certainly they use these in emergency communications and the municipalities here in the United States. I don't know about up there in Canada, but this is a big deal. And so it's so refreshing, really, to hear this coming out. And what do you see as far as the concern amongst your co-workers and other people in the industry? Are they basically at the higher level? It looks like these guys are basically under the control of this, from my perspective. I certainly don't mean to, put words in anybody's mouth. I don't work in the telecommunications industry, but what do you think about that, Scott?
For the most part, it's really, really simple. Do what you're told until I tell you what your opinion is going to be. Plain and simple, information is being given out with the smallest amount, what's necessary to do your job. Therefore, you won't ask a question. It's you go put a box on this pole here. You run a cable. Why? Because it's your job. Why is this antenna? Don't ask why. Do your job. Plain and simple. One of the guys from who thought he was all that, he was a car salesman in Detroit or something, and he came into the industry and was out in Vancouver and was helping design a site. And there was some time we started talking. And a topic of discussion that was, I guess, questionable in some areas came up. And he looked right at me and goes, "Are you going to question everything? Why don't you just believe what you're told?" And I just went, "You are kidding me. You are in a management position. You're telling everyone you should believe what you're told and don't ask questions. Wow, you are a puppet." But it is the puppets who hand the work down. They don't want people who ask questions. They want people who do what they're told to do. And so when they start asking questions, hence the reason why I only give out my first name, if you start asking too many questions, you're going to get pushed aside.
Yeah, and I think that you would definitely be protected in that area. And I certainly wouldn't want to get you out of your comfort zone, but I appreciate you. I commend you for being here today with all that you basically have at stake. And what I would say is, when we talk about they, when we say these guys are puppet strings and they just do what they're told because these other guys are telling them. What I'm getting at, Scott, is that the uppermost they, is already AI. Is already AI, and this is something that is very difficult for people to begin to wrap their minds around, and it's all already plugged into the basics of the fiber hub. Anything that has anything to do with fiber optics has an artificial intelligence interface hooked up to it already. And so,
let me jump in on that.
Sure, please.
Yes and no at the same time. Yes, everything is connected together, and it tells what they should do. There still are all the CEOs who are bought out, and they do what they want to do because they make the money, and they make the decisions to keep making themselves rich and be fatter little sweaty pigs, and who just grow and grow. That's their job. That's what they want. They want the money and the fame and all that. But going on these ad hoc networks, jumping back to the control and what's just gone on today with the NSA spying being cut off, do you really think that matters one iota? When you talk about the AI, it is so simple. It is so in everyone's face, they can't see the forest for the trees, using that saying, because everybody nowadays is so grown accustomed to the matrix, they live it, and they don't care. They can't see it because they're in it. By that, I mean Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Now, here, let me just...
What about television, Scott?
Well, that's just another trough that people feed off of, and it's a steady informational flow from, let's say, the operators, the people who just pour the information through the media. The media is, in my mind, one of the biggest, most corrupt systems out there, and the people who sit there and take it in as if it's truth, they're the suckers because they're the ones who are actually believing what about 1% of the world tells them they should believe. It's sad. Think about how many people are on Facebook. Millions. And then this stupid thing comes up. It's a picture. I'll use an example here. It's a picture of an outhouse. And the wording on it says, like if you know what it is, share if you've ever used it. But this example goes for a gazillion other things. How dumb are people? They like it and they share it because it's cool and all their friends are and all this. And then something else. Some small thing that you did as a kid. Oh, yeah, I did that. I like that. Every time you do this, there is an artificial intelligence that do not need the NSA approval, that do not need cell phone recordings. They don't need that. It builds a profile on every man, woman, and child who has an IP address, which is you. Your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, your Google, they're all connecting, which creates a file. Now imagine if it was a file folder, as in people have paper file folders in an office. Every time you go, oh, click, that's cool. Oh, click, I like that. Oh, yeah, I share. Now you take every frickin' thing you've done over the last 5 years, put it in a file folder, hand it over to an NSA agent and go, here you go. Here's everything about me, where I've been, the pictures I've taken, what I've done in my life, how I wipe my frickin' ass. Everything is in there. They don't need anything.
Let me ask you this.
The government owns this already.
Is it possible that this major strong point of this system that you're talking about here and this AI is also this data collection? Is it possible that this is also its Achilles heel in the sense that when you put information into it, it's susceptible to this information?
Susceptible to it in which way?
That's the question. That is the question that is very pressing in my mind. I think that when we see a system ultimately that's interfacing with our consciousness and that we see can literally have physical ramifications on a holographic level, it's expressed in many different ways, we see that when we put our own essence essentially into this system, it begins to affect the system in a plethora of different ways. And so if we default to this system and we basically take all the stuff at face value, then we're basically aloof at that point, and we're working on behalf of the system. It's the flip side of the coin to be able to use that system for our advantage and let it work for us and basically take it over.
There is a way. There absolutely is a way on this. But when you have 20 million people that are asleep at their own consciousness, it's hard to get to that many people to wake up and smell the coffee and realize what's going on in this world. And by this, I mean, outside of all the emissions that have health hazards, my opinion is this shit right here. This is way, way more dangerous than any health hazards. The information we are putting out there on this network. Now, all this, what we're talking about, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, blah, 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 we are putting this, now I'm not saying you and me, the general public, putting this in the hands of every man, woman, and child on these mobile network cell phones. And they carry it with them wherever they go. It's like, ooh, a flower, click. Ooh, look, a doggy, click. They carry it all the time. So it's not just once in a while when they're sitting at the computer. It's their entire life. This is where the problem comes in. This is where they got to wake up, because all they've done is put a great big friggin' X on their head every single place they go, because that phone, unless you pull the battery, can track your every movement, whether your GPS is turned off or not, wherever you go, whether you're in tunnels, whether you're 40 stories up, it can tell how high you are, what your latitude and longitude is, what you're using it for, and it builds a profile of what you're doing. Can the users make a shift in how they use the product itself? Can they shift their consciousness? Can they shift the AI consciousness? How many people have to wake up to do that?
No, Scott, I'm not disagreeing with you in essence, but what I'm saying is it possible? I would say that it is definitely possible that if I choose to put my own awakened consciousness into this system, I can tell it what to do.
Yes.
I can tell it what to do, and it doesn't matter how many clicks I did or this other stuff, because every click that I make is another step in that direction.
If you choose what you're doing while you're doing it, and you knowingly are acting on your own behalf, that is the key point. That's where people have to wake up and do this on their own. And you're absolutely right. Can this make an effect? Yes, by our actions. What we choose to do. How can this affect the AI? I don't have all the answers, but I do know what questions to ask to make people think on this, just like what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Scott.
How can it make the shift in the AI? There's a question.
In your professional opinion, we as civilians, and you being a civilian as well, but working for this industry, how can we protect ourselves at this point in time and prepare ourselves for what is coming?
Prepare yourselves.
Well, how could we protect ourselves right now?
Let's start with that one for sure. To be honest, use what you use wisely. For yourself, for anyone listening, be very conscious about the decisions we make. And this is what we teach our children. We try and teach our children as they're growing up. Think before you act. All the time. Whether you're holding a handheld device, whether you're walking down the street and you see antennas that are potentially lower than you like, if they are, you can always call and report it. That's one way you can take action for sure. Talk to someone who does know. Like, we have had a few chats about some of this stuff. Find out what's in your local area. There was some towers to be built locally within about 15 miles of my place here, and they were to be built right near schools. There was enough public outcry that they changed the location of it. They did not want the hatred of 10,000 people, so they moved it to a new location further from the schools, out into the countryside, where it could be active out there and not at the base of the school. People took action. They stood up for themselves. Same thing in daily life, whether it's do I check on my statuses online? What do I post? What kind of wording do I use when I put my blogs out there? Teenagers, particularly. Oh my goodness. Here's where it comes into the public. I don't know how to talk to people enough to say, look at what you're doing. Think about what you're posting. This shit all goes into the system. I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah, it is frustrating. You know, I've got stuff out here showing that these guys are funding black projects with dope money come out of Afghanistan, for Christ's sake. I put this on my Facebook page. Now, does this happen in fact? It's something that I would say clearly that it does. And we have seen this kind of stuff go round and round. And when we trace it all the way back to the ARPANET and all this other stuff, look, we had the space race comes out in 1957 with the launch of Sputnik. Okay? Less than 3 years later, we have a major server online for the Department of Defense here in the United States. And it's online right now with about 340,000 plus documents that are all there. This is the Open Archive. It's really an AI system that's been online since less than 3 years after we first went to space. Okay? In this current epoch, in the public's mind. You know, that's the official story that we have. And then the ARPANET began to be developed, and they switched to DARPA in 1972. And it's been ongoing and progressive since there. I mean, of course, on the old internet backbone, in which you have really 3 hubs. You know anything about those hubs here in the United States? I know we've got one in Denver, we've got one up around San Francisco, and one around Boston. And these are the old backbone hubs for NSA and all the rest of these guys, and this is the official old-school backbone. And, you know, when we look into this stuff, this thing already had an AI hooked up to it. This thing already had an AI hooked up to it, and what's been going on is this has been influencing people, beginning people at high-ranking positions within the defense and intelligence community and the telecommunications infrastructure into building this network to its own end. This is a self-aware system, and it has been doing this, and now it's putting itself out into the mainstream and becoming accessible. But that doesn't mean that it has not been here prior, and this is really the brunt of what we have to look at when we look at this deal from my perspective. And certainly this is something that I say is not a matter of opinion. This is not conjecture. This is something that we can nail it down. We've seen this across the board from all the different agencies are going on record with this stuff now. I can tell you that I've certainly heard a lot of chatter about people within the CIA and others publicly speaking about, you know, as a civilian, and they're speaking about this publicly, about the AI, the dangers of it, and so on. And so what I'm really getting at here is it's dumbfounding for the average person to consider this like we're talking about here. I mean, how do we, I guess we're at the place of how we're going to guard ourselves to this. My ultimate answer to that, to answer the question that you really asked, Scott, Bobby, is to not have any fear of it and to take it as our own. That's what God basically tells me to do, to bring that aspect of it into it. My spirituality is reflected in that, in the sense that I will not let the system govern me. I will not let the system take over my life and tell me what to do. And that is where I stand sovereign in it and take my power back as an individual. And, I just checked. That's after we were talking about how many people on Facebook. We've got over 1 billion, over 1 billion people, which is, close to a sixth of the people on Earth. There's a seventh, I guess, 7 billion. So close to a seventh of the people here on Earth. And certainly more people than that are using the internet, including the new free internet thing that Facebook itself is doing with all their, basically billions and billions of dollars they're pulling in revenue from doing stuff like Scott's telling us, collecting all of our data and selling it to third-party companies. This is how Facebook makes their money. And so that I just wanted to touch on that. I feel it's so important for people to be empowered in that sense because I exercise this in my daily affairs and they have a profound effect on my environment.
Absolutely, and you guys are bang on the money using a call to action, using Facebook, using these systems to do like the people did who got the tower to move. You're enlightening, talking to people, facing it head on with no fear, sharing it with people, waking more people up to actually what's going on, and having no fear of what the AI is. Nothing in this world surprises me anymore. Honestly, I don't know what could really surprise me. I went through a nasty divorce. that wasn't just it. But like you say, being funded by drug money across from Afghanistan, yeah, I've accepted this world, that this world is messed up. But it's not the world that's messed up, it's the people within it. And I have no fear of them. I grew up as a Christian as a kid. And then I had to find my own way. And I grew up. And I understand. There is no need for fear. This is all known. This is going to happen. I'm accepting that it's going to happen. What is our role to do with it? Our role is to be out there and talk to people. This is why, in my position, I am in the world, but not of the world. So I have to be very cautious about it. But at the same time, I can share with people what I really see, waking people up where I can, and have open discussions.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on with us and going into this detail because, at call to actions, we're always focused on the solution. And, we often, and with the Revelation 15:2 that's on our website, it goes into that focus and focusing on us being victorious over this system, standing on it. And, we know that is where we're going because every day by having these conversations and waking people up to realize that you are giving personal information to a system that is profiling you, that could potentially be manipulating you due to the information that you're giving it. On the other edge of that, there are people like us that also know that we can expose this stuff and be victorious over it simply by exposing it. We've already seen these things happen. We've seen
just the acknowledgement of these things on the collective level has a profound effect. We saw the NSA data center melt down after the government shut down, right after the way that this whole system was propagated out of Corey Hall. It blew up. Then the NSA team blew up after the government is shut down. And you're so right, guys. Everybody here tonight is so right. And what I wanted to basically say is that if somebody out there has a difficulty understanding, we're being steered by AI, these guys must be crazy. What the heck are they talking about? Let me give somebody a real rudimentary example and try to kind of illustrate how it affects us on our daily life so fundamentally, if I may, real quickly. And that is simply, when's the last time that your GPS took you to the wrong location in your car? This has happened to people all the time, okay? Let me tell you what that is exactly happening to you. AI has steered you, literally, to the wrong location. It has taken you somewhere where you did not want to be. The store is not there. The wrong house. You're way off in the boonies on some freaking dirt road out in the middle of nowhere. God knows what your situation may have been, okay? And people have got a slew of different names for AI out there. All kinds of stuff that, is not a good thing that they're talking about here when they're talking about Siri or all these other things. It's interesting also that Siri is the name of the one from Apple, which ultimately really you can tie all that back into the Stanford Institute of Research and Technology. Siri is really SRI, which is the Stanford Research Institute, which is really one of the fundamental players in AI from the onset of the Internet, which is so interesting to put that in the historical context. But, that is a good example for people to try to, you're being steered by artificial intelligence through a satellite signal right there. literally, in the literal sense, AI is steering people on a massive scale. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about the complete infrastructure of not only communication, but for transactions, monetarily and economically. We're also talking about the shipping of goods, the way that your supermarket is filled up with groceries today. It all comes through GPS. It all comes through all these other types of technologies. Also, we have the AI behind it. And so, obviously we don't want to piss this thing off, but we definitely need to have this thing working for us. If this is the case, if this is going to be an operation. And so that is the question of the day as far as how this stuff is going on, because, what are the alternatives? It's not like we can shut the internet down, is it? It's not like, our whole infrastructure is based upon this today. And so we're at a real catch-22, and it's a quagmire. It's something that we're going to have to learn how to overcome and have this victory over in order to keep going. And, and for us to be demonized by our leaders and anyone for taking the option of, I want to homeschool my kids. I want to live off the grid. I want to derive my energy from renewable resources and all these types of things. I'm here to tell you it's evil. Okay, those guys have no right to sit here and tell us that. And ultimately, it looks like they're coming from a place where they believe it themselves so much, and they're the ones who need the freaking help, you guys. And I'll just kind of leave this tap for now, but yeah.
For myself, I agree with you. Therefore, I am planning to cover myself. I have my own greenhouse. Now, this is from straight up. By the end of this week, I'll be working for one of the second largest companies in the world for telecom provider. At the same time, I have my own greenhouse. I've done aquaponics by using the fish and plant in relation to each other. I'm prepared to go hunting by having my own equipment. I'm teaching the kids how to light fire with simply a bottle of water, with a bag of water, how to light fires. Camping gear is all prepared, packed up in my shop, ready to go. If there was a major disaster, what if there was ever a solar flare? A big one. The world as we know it would cease to exist. Everything that operates everybody's lives would stop. And the Civil War, to get to the grocery store, would be unreal, because nobody knows how to do anything anymore. They do what they're told. They go to the store because meat comes from the store. It doesn't come from the farm. It comes, how could you dare go kill a rabbit, you terrible man? Well, I personally don't unless I had to, but I know how to.
Yeah, they'll sit there and put it in their mouth. They don't think about what they're putting in their mouth. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And, we have the element of autonomous systems tied into all this deal, of course, and that's also another issue where it's kind of like that scenario from Terminator. I mean, this is something that's
straight up.
It is. It is. I mean, we have autonomous systems, drones, all these other things, and when you have an AI running this stuff, and the people that are behind it, it's a nightmare. Yeah. Trucking
systems are now being designed to be self-driven, full-size semi-trucks, where the operator can turn around, climb in the back, and go to sleep, while the semi-truck loaded full of the grocery store's goods is flying down the highway at 100 miles an hour. It is automated. The world we live in is not what people think it is. They think everything is hunky-dory, just have a good life, go to work, do your thing, come home, play on the internet, play video games, go back to work, do your thing. Because they don't think outside the box. They don't stop long enough to look up and look around them and realize what would happen if the power
I'm here to tell them. I'm here to tell anybody out there, your major supermarket has a maximum of 72 hours worth of food in its given neighborhood.
And then
before it's all done, it's done. It's gone. And there's nothing coming in. You're on your own.
And with Agenda 21, which is a whole other story, and I don't want to get much into that because our time's running out, but where they crowd people into cities, many, many, many thousands of people, maybe millions, haven't gone outside the cities to see what's really out there, unless they fly from city to city office to office, a job site to job site, all within the city limits. What's out there? They don't know how to handle themselves, let alone handle their own family, or what would happen if there was a disaster where, oh no, that's what the military is there for. They'll protect us. Okay. All right.
I'm glad you said that, Scott, because one of the things that I, have come to learn about this, and having been in a place where I was terrified, essentially of this kind of martial law takeover and all this other stuff. Of course, we have Jade Helm coming up. I've just written an article. We had 27 days of straight rain in the state of Texas, 2 weeks now to the Jade Helm exercise. And we've had the worst flooding in 73 years, over 20 deaths, millions of damages, thousands displaced. And guess what happened April 30th, literally days before the rain began? We had the Texas Weather Modification Advisory Committee, which most people have no idea that exists also, meet and talk about cloud seeding and how to accentuate rain in the areas in which we're hit. And so this is a big deal. The public needs to be aware of this. And what I was going to say is about the military is that there's a lot of these guys that are awake. There's a lot of, I can tell you right now, the Marines are sick of pushing heroin. They understand what it's going for. They understand that the basically ISIS has been funded by rogue elements within our defense and intelligence community. This is not a secret. It's certainly not a secret within the military. And so the people are going to have to start waking up to this. And I'm going to tell you, there's a whole bunch of cops out here that I know. There's a whole bunch of military people out here that I know that aren't happening. A bunch of UN people come out here. It's war. You want to talk about civil war? We're not going to sit here and shoot our own citizens because of some UN crazy agenda or any of that kind of stuff. We're not having it. And if we look at the UN right now, AOL
kind of pushback
all over their website. AOL of all people. I'll tell you
what kind of pushback is going to happen though when people start awakening and actually saying no. What kind of pushback is going to happen? They're going to be called rebels because they're pushing back. You and I are going to be called rebels. The pushback from the military, from the people who actually still listen to the man. What kind of pushback is going to happen? I don't know. That's a question I'm asking because I'm not down there dealing with that firsthand. I'm in a position right now myself where within an hour and a half, I could be gone. Like
preparedness is key. Preparedness is key. Anybody out there who wants to say that makes you a terrorist, I'm going to tell you right now, you're a terrorist. Anybody out there who wants to say being prepared for your family, being prepared for your water needs, being prepared for your food needs, and it makes you somebody that's in a bad place, that person telling you that is a straight-up terrorist working for a corporate entity that basically needs to clean themselves out, and that's the way that I feel about it. And so, my name is Eugene Irvin. I approve this message because I just, and you have to stand firm in your convictions when it comes to this kind of stuff. Because it's just, and I expect, guys, to see that out of the quote man. Because we're seeing these guys say, oh my God, what have I been doing? Oh my God, what have I been involved in? And for each one of them that works at a place like yourself, the second largest telecommunications provider in the world, or, the Pentagon, or, you name it, people are going to have to stand together over this common enemy. And, is it a bunch of spaceships coming down out of the sky and all this kind of stuff? No, not necessarily. I mean, there might be some of that, but do we have the technology for that ourselves? Yes, Bobby would be the first to tell you. Yeah, go look up. There's over, a couple hundred flying saucer patents, which we have. And so we know that this kind of technology is real, but when we it really pulls back onto this AI interface with human consciousness, and it's so delightful, really, to hear somebody like yourself in your position to come out, acknowledge these things, and be like, you know what, this is a common threat, and to get all this out on the table, because number one, preparedness is a key element of human life throughout history. And each time that we haven't had it throughout history, which, of course, we're doomed to repeat if we don't change it and understand these things, all the people that have said, the Holocaust of the Jews, which, people, I see these guys on Facebook, oh, the Holocaust was fake. You know what? Even if it wasn't 6 million people, well, how many people have the Nazis killed since the Holocaust? Since they've come over here and taken in our White House and all the kind of other stuff that they've done. You know what I'm saying? So that's the issue.
Thanks for the paperclip.
Yeah, whether if it was 6 million or if it was 100,000, bottom line, you can see them filling up mass graves with bulldozers over there. Why? Because the people sat there and waited for a knock on their door for this to come and happen. And so what are the ultimate influences there that make people want to do these things? You know, it's kind of like, can't we all get along? You know, get a long stick and beat the shit out of each other with it? I mean, it's just, we have to let these things go. We have to understand the sins of our fathers have culminated to this point and break these curses. If there's one thing I know about in my life, it's that. And regardless of how that may sound to somebody else, what does that mean? If you're an atheist, if you're an agnostic, it means basically dealing with the things that have come to pass and culminated in our lives and having an objective point of view for the future to not let them continue. And certainly not to let them get worse. And so that's it. That's all I've got about that, guys. I'm so passionate about this because we're talking about the future of humanity here. And so it is what
Eventually, I hope to get a few others to speak out. I know there's a handful of people within the industry who all feel the same. They just don't got the balls to stand up and say it because of fear of retribution. In time, I'm sure there will be more voices coming out from within the communication industry, and we'll see where it goes from there.
And I believe from this show, we'll really pull people out to really spill the beans, you know, and this may be the start of a resistance.
I mean, the resistance is in our hearts. The resistance is written on our hearts, and it's already here. You know, I mean, when you hear somebody like Alex Jones, for example, say, this is the resistance, he's the last guy to come and say, there's cell phone towers on public school property. Why? Because he can't. He's got FCC and all these other guys basically up there paying all his bills. Is he a sellout? I'm not here to pick a fight with any of these guys. The bottom line is maybe they're under control of the system in ways that most people can't even begin to understand or imagine today. And so it's just so pivotal for us to encourage those around us to wake up, because it doesn't take that many, is what is so profound when we look at this. It's only with the human being is such a powerful instrument of creation. We have the ability to do so many things, and with all of the stuff that's being thrown in, I've said this in I don't know how many interviews out there, you know, the nano, the GMO, the fluoride, you name it, the complete assault on the human being. Isn't it amazing that we are still here, you know, growing up like that weed out of the crack in the middle of the concrete somewhere, you know, that basically turns into a tree? I mean, what have we got here in this interview? We've done complete tree climbing to AI and satellites and stuff, okay? And so we are profound people that have the ability to do this, and we are all created equally. We can all do this together, and when we stand together, we are just so much more powerful, and that is the number one thing that these guys will try to attack every time that are in control of this system, is to divide and conquer. And that is, in essence, the oldest trick in the book. And it's so pivotal for us to get rid of that division. I don't care if you're a Muslim. I don't care if you're a freaking Russian. I don't care where you're from, okay? If you basically want to see my political views are, if it kills people, hurts people, I don't like it, period. Case closed, discussion. That's it. It doesn't matter. And so I'm not here to judge or condemn anybody. I'm certainly not here to participate with anybody in any illicit activities either. And so that doesn't make anybody a bad person. You know, we can grow from these types of ideas is what I'm saying. And I'm actually standing here by this little fiber hub right now listening to the fans blow. And you can see it's an AT&T deal. And, you know, this technology goes way back. And it's very interesting to see how all this stuff is coming out to play through the headline. In fact, I've been watching and monitoring a guy's working on a tower site right now, climbing up the tower. Scott is actually what I was looking at as we began this interview, and it's interesting. And you know, one of the things I wanted to ask you, I have seen in some locations these guys be outfitted with what I think is lead on their bodies in order to shield them from this radiation. Can you answer that question for me? What is that, and do they still do that, and what are the reasons why they would do that?
If it would be done, it'd be very seldom, and it would be done on more of radio towers, as in FM radios, or TV towers, because of the power density and the frequency levels. And it's an RF suit. It most likely be a blue suit, but it has to be a full suit like beekeepers wear, which covers the face and everything. That is potentially something they could be doing.
It freaks me out when I see them. It's like, oh my God, there's a bunch of aliens up there in the tower. It literally freaks me out, yeah. But
personally, I will never wear them. I never have, and I won't because of the risks involved in it.
What type of risks? What kind of risks are associated with that?
Well, if you have to wear it, and if you're told you have to wear it, and I have been, it's because the frequency, the power density is high enough to cause harm. Therefore, you're relying on a thin layer of protective system. Well, if you ever climbed around on a machinery that has a whole lot of bolts and steel on it, the likelihood of catching it and ripping on, like ripping your jeans open, is quite high. If you were to rip this open at any point in your body, that point is now exposed to RF energy, which is known to be hazardous if you have to wear the suit. I've turned down jobs because I said, up yours, buddy. I'm not going to put myself at that kind of risk.
Wow, yeah. Good for you. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, I just wanted to make mention about the human potential, Eugene, since we were covering that space. You know, if it takes this long and this much technology, to the degree that they are going to try to manipulate us, they are scared of what we can do. And we don't need their technology to undo what they're trying to do to manipulate us. And we've already seen it. So, you know, if more than a couple of people start waking up, unplug from the television set, start thinking, get their pineal gland actually working by clearing it, turn off the Wi-Fi and start thinking, get in nature, get away from this stuff. And you'll be able to see through it, for crying out loud. It's not that difficult to do.
Oh, that is so true, Tim, and thank you for that. And one thing I wanted to extend to you, Scott, is I have a very dear friend named Candy who has helped us immeasurably and helped so many people with the type of energetic clearing that deals with the different energy centers in the body. And this is something that there's, you know, about $200 billion, for example, just in the cancer industry alone last year was made. And so there's a lot of money invested for us to not know these real simple type of techniques. But what I was going to get at is she was feeling targeted from her device. And we know at sometimes there is an ability for a device to be able to make you start having that feeling like you were describing where you shut down that site and to get these guys out of here because we're basically being targeted right now. It's the feeling in the stomach, it's the nausea, it's the disorientation, and so on. The bottom line is when she cleared herself, I said, this is what I want you to do. She's the one who has taught me so much about these clearings. And I said, look, I want you to basically clear yourself for your device. I want you to clear yourself for the Wi-Fi. And what this does is it allows, our bodies aren't made to handle these types of frequencies from the womb on. I mean, there may be some things going on with the evolution of this with our species. Obviously, we are beings of frequency in essence anyway. But the bottom, what I'm getting at is that when we're made up of these frequencies and we're being affected by these, the Schumann resonance, which is the 7.83 hertz that kind of fluctuates a little bit to the Earth, actually is emanating. It kind of goes out into the ionosphere. This has a strong effect on our consciousness, and this is something that has been very well documented in different case studies and stuff from universities as far back as the 60s. And when this kind of stuff is out of whack, our consciousness and our ways of thinking really gets out of whack as well. And when we can clear ourselves for this EMF, when we can clear ourselves for the Wi-Fi and stuff, it really is a whole new ball game in which, you know, you're basically like walking through fire at that point, and it's unable to affect you. And so it's very powerful. And another question, I know there's a lot of people out there that use different, you know, shielding measures on their phones, Scott. They use different, you know, there's a lot of different EMF resistant, even curtains now, clothing, hoodies, hats. What can you tell us about any of that kind of stuff? And maybe you might know something about shungite. Anything there?
I've heard of it, but why don't we talk about the absolute easiest way of shielding your phone? To make your phone nothing but a paperweight. Is that what you talk about by shielding?
Sure, absolutely. What do you got there?
It's almost funny. It's so simple, it's so ludicrous that it's almost funny. I had a BlackBerry I was using, and it had a nice little handy-dandy case where you just slide your phone right in the case. So I took simply baking aluminum foil. I folded it around my phone nice and tightly, packed it around my phone, jammed my phone in the case, pulled my phone out, left the foil inside of it, every time I put my phone away, it is absolutely blocked. Nothing goes in, nothing comes out, no GPS works, no nothing on it works. It is completely dead. The battery will last forever.
That's hilarious because you're going to hear all these guys. I go on the threads on places like the CDC. I go on threads with people like Monsanto, FDA, and these others. And every time, half the time there'll be somebody that I already blocked will pop out. They won't even have a picture there. It'll be a brand new profile. And they're like, oh, here's the tinfoil hatters again. And that's like their default mechanism. And that should tell us something right there. It actually works. It actually works.
I've done it. I've done it many times because when I want to go and I don't want to be, not that I'm having to be worried about being followed or anything, but I want my phone off and absolutely off. I want to drive. I want no distractions. Throw it in the case, throw it in the car. I get nothing until I get to my destination, pull it out, set it down, and wait for 2 minutes for it to finish dinging, all the messages or whatever coming in, and guess what? I get my private time. You're not supposed to know about that. It's too simple.
Yeah,
if you knew about
the
that,
best things in life are simple. And that's the same thing.
You'll go online.
With these clearings. Wow, that's amazing.
You'll go online, and some Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to be out there and sell the same thing to you for $50 when you can buy it for 99 cents at the dollar store, and you can do 20 phones with it. But people will rather buy it because it has a nice, pretty case to it. No, this is all disguise. Because you get a metal case to put your phone in, wrap the damn thing in foil, throw it in your case, it's done. And if it gets wrecked, that's okay. Go buy a potato.
What if we just made aluminum cell phone cases? Would that work?
It'll totally work. As long as the aluminum foil can seal at least around about 95% of the phone. You want to get the top of the phone.
That's my next question. As far as the face of the device, you do have to cover that as well.
Face? Yes.
Okay.
Cover the back of it for sure, because the NFC on the phone, Near Field Communications, goes out the back of the phone, either where it says Samsung or where the little BlackBerry symbol is, which is actually a way to pay for things through your credit card right off your phone, on little symbols on the back. That's where the near field communication comes from. So if you cover your phone, just wrap it fully in aluminum foil, you're done. Give it a little fold on the sides, and that's it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I did a little video clip on that, and it looked stupid. It looked like I was one of the little tinfoil hat guys or something because it's something so ridiculous, but it works so well.
Yeah, I just find that you mentioned that foil because that's exactly what we were taking readings on the computer, and where Bobby was putting his wrist to, he put foil down there to block the what was coming off the radiation or whatever you want to call it, that was coming off the computer, because we were getting a really high reading where he was putting his arm, and his arm was bothering.
Oh yeah. To the very right of the mouse pad on a laptop, there's a finger pad. To the very right of that, where typically anyone would lay their wrist to type, is where the highest level of radiation was coming from the computer, directly into the central nervous system of the operator.
Yep.
So he has foil on there.
If you were to put a mouse pad, take a mouse pad, cut it to the size that fits on the front of your laptop right there, but put foil on the bottom of your mouse pad, it'll be a lot more comfortable. The bottom of it will do the reflection of any signal that comes off of there. It'll look nice, be comfortable, done deal. The simple things are often the easiest, and they really work.
Yeah, I'll do that, actually.
Great idea.
But my time is starting to run short.
Yes. All right. Well, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Well, let me ask you something real quick, Scott. We're sitting here looking at a DARPA doc, and I just wanted to run it by you. Have you heard anything about the Free Space Optical Link, or the FSO? And this is at 100 gigabytes a second, and it's a RF band, which is the fiber optics equivalent RF backbone. Do you know anything about that?
It's probably running in the K-band.
it looks like they're going to want to implement this, and RF is certainly something that we have concerns about for human exposure, but it is also a contingency in the event of the fiber system going down. Would it not be?
Unlikely the fiber systems will go down, but it's more of a contingency if they get damaged. There was one here in Vancouver where our electrical provider, BC Hydro, somebody was working on the streets, and the backhoe dug up the main backbone that went from building A to building B. Within about 8 to 10 hours, there was a system set up on the top of both buildings that had free space optical from point A to point B, connected back to the building. Fiber optic link was back wireless. Yes, it is operational. It is possible. Unlikely is great for long range because of interference in the air, as in storms, heavy rain, causing some fade. Although that will be corrected.
It looks like it's just military. I mean, the diagram that I'm looking at here, it's an illustration, and it's showing you've got like an aircraft carrier out in the ocean, you've got like a communication ship off from it, and then you have a bunch of ground forces and stuff, and they're in different planes up in the air and satellite, and it's showing how they use this in conjunction for like an operation. It says develop point-to-point link that uses high-order modulation and spatial multiplexing to achieve a high-capacity 100 kilobytes per second RF pattern with tactical relevant ranges.
Send it to me.
I will. It's already up there on my Facebook page. It actually says read only. Age of transparency is basically how I feel about it. It's not classified or anything. It's a proof of public release. Yeah, it says it here. It says a proof of public release. So I'll go ahead. What I'll do is, I can tag you in it on Facebook. That's kind of my style because I just don't care. I can email it to you too if you have your preference. I don't care. I was going to tag you in it during the interview, but it's up to you.
Email it to me. The other guys have my email address here.
Sure.
And shoot that over. That way I can store it right in my computer and have a good look at it and figure out exactly what the system is.
Yeah, it's pretty, 100 gigabytes a second. That's quite a lot of bandwidth.
Well, maybe depending on the band they're using. Maybe they're using a very, very wide band for military, which would allow for huge capacity. And if they're using military, they could be reflecting it as well, rather than a direct point-to-point, which is often used in some systems.
I was also going to ask you, what do you know about these drones being mobile Wi-Fi hotspots? Have you heard anything about that?
I know a lot about those.
Can you talk to us about that at all? I mean, are they using these things, and how are they using them?
I don't know how much of it is really in public use right now, because this is only going to be an short interim until the microsatellites are dispersed into space, and that will then take care of all the Wi-Fi necessary. The drones would just be temporary over concerts, over large populated areas, and it would be just a point-to-multipoint system that has a open or secured Wi-Fi rebroadcasting from the drone itself. A very simple system.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. One of the things that really aroused my concern a few years back was a document that we see called Opening Pandora's Box. And the subtitle there is Genetic Weapons on UAVs. And this is something where they get into the terahertz band, and we know that terahertz has been shown to disrupt genetic life very, very, it's abusive to the DNA. And so this is something that causes concern, obviously, when we talk about public health and all this other. And when we get into a phenomenon called bioencoding, Scott, is that something that you're familiar with?
Well, when it comes to drones and that, I don't think the drones would be capable of that unless they're going to be, because of what it would take to produce terahertz, the type of radio unit to create enough power to make that useful, it would have to be a very large drone.
Well, we've also got the documents about the they're basically nuclear-powered drones. So that
it would have to be. It would have to be like the large glider-sized UAVs to have any potential of having terahertz power that would have enough power density to produce any significant effects. If that was the case, then yes, it's possible. Anything is possible. It just depends on how it's designed and how it's built. I have a little drone of my own that runs on Wi-Fi off my phone. And you fly it around the yard, and it's cool. A friend of mine has a couple. He's invested probably $60 grand into a few drones that he has, and those are fully automated. He uses it more for photography and inspection uses.
I wasn't talking about for personal use. I think it's military grade. We've got these Navy ones now that are they're scary looking.
It starts off with the little ones. If they can do this for public, they can do it for private. What they can do for military is exponentially greater. If I can operate a drone off my cell phone, and someone else can operate it off a handheld device, and it has the purpose of having a large gyro on it. It has a gimbal on it for a heavy camera. Take off the camera, put something else on there. Same purpose, different result. You're flying with a device that can be remotely operated, whether you're shooting with a camera, whether you're shooting with an M16, whether you're shooting with a laser, whether the drone weighs 40 pounds or weighs 4,000 pounds, it's all the same. It's simply mechanics. And so if they can create a drone that can fly autonomously and run directly off of AI, choose its own targets as it's going, and fire with a laser or a terahertz weapon instead, all that is swapping out equipment. It's pretty simple for them to do. Military has the funds, they got the skill, they got the manpower, they got the desire to kill. So
hopefully they'll have some ethics in order to use this stuff in the right ways. I mean, the U.S. Air Force has just come out and confirmed, you can see this on CNN and other sources now, with this electromagnetic pulse weapon that, quote, says we shut everything down in the very specific areas of office buildings and so on, where they can shut down your computers, they can shut down everything. And that also is interesting. That I was just downtown Dallas 2 nights ago, and I saw these panels, these panel emitters, like you're talking about, the 54s by 18s or whatever they are, and they were inside of a building facing out the window. You ever seen that?
Oh, I built them.
Yeah, well, I had never seen that before. That just took me back. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yep, inside of buildings. It's hidden inside of office floors. You'll have a mechanical floor, sometimes level 13, people don't know about. If it's a Chinese-owned building, they'll be skipping level 24, and they'll put mechanics in there, stuff people don't know about. The top floors of buildings. Go to Vegas. Caesar's Palace.
I mean, I've been up on some buildings. I was actually up talking to an AT&T gal, and during an exercise here, there was a national continuity communications exercise going on back in 2011, and she was just on these ad hocs up on top of this building, and I don't know if they're talking to her about it, and it literally made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. She says, oh yeah, we're doing an exercise for a, quote, 9/11 style event, end quote. That'll freak you out.
I've been in some nerve centers where they have bunkers underneath the buildings, and nobody would know about it, that can hold up to 200 people for 6 weeks. All the food, the water, the emergency supplies, and a built-in septic system, and it is a nerve center of a major city, and it runs all emergency communications out of this bunker.
Yeah, when we get into the underground facilities, buddy, this is a heavy topic. I don't got time for that tonight. Yeah, we don't have time for that. I was going to say I was just at one just the other day down here, and I've done some video down there, and I've released that stuff publicly. It's not about the audience, but it's about seeing these things get done, and it's real interesting to see how this stuff does have an effect. These things, we put our hearts into this, and it makes a difference. And I appreciate your time so much today, Scott. I mean, is there anything else that we really, really need to know as far as the subject matter that we've been dealing with today?
Most likely, yes, and I'll be in contact in the future more. This has been a very good, very deep first conversation, and not so painful. So maybe I'll have a few more chats, and
we would love to have
more
you back,
information.
Scott. Absolutely love to have you back anytime. We'll make time for you, and it's a pleasure. I remember the first time meeting you was on Facebook, actually, in regards to the Anne Frank issue, which I have been so involved in out here, and we kind of butted heads at first. You being somebody who comes from your level of technical prowess and experience in the telecommunications industry, and myself, you know, primarily being a researcher and being involved in these different aspects of trying to uncover some of this stuff. And it's really nice to see how this has developed, and I'm just so pleased, because sometimes, you know, I might jump at somebody a little bit, and I didn't take that approach with you, and it's really panned out. And so that really makes me want to take a look back. And I want to just say that for anybody out there. You know, sometimes people, you know, will keep putting out information in which is not good simply because they believe it too. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. We need to be able to take a look at this stuff and begin to work it together, because there's a lot of confusion. And a lot of us, you know, if we're truthers or whatever you want to think of people as, we get kind of stuck in our ways too, and we're not able to learn new information. And the number one piece of information that I want to hand anybody in any interview is that we have the authority. We can use our own resonance. We can use our bioelectric field. We can use our heart energy to have an effect on this stuff. And so, thank you, Scott.
On that, I'm sure I've thrown some information out there that pisses off some people, but if it does enough, it makes them think. And making somebody think about something is a better end result.
Absolutely.
Question everything.
That is right. Yeah.
Yeah, discernment is where we want to get everybody in, and if we can just get them off technology long enough to actually start thinking for themselves, then they can actually use their brain and their hearts to know the difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. On that note, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We'll plan on speaking with you again, and we'll get the interview up with all the relevant topics that we covered, and look forward to sharing this with others. And most importantly, everyone, you know, this is we're always focused on the solution side of this thing. We're sharing what's out there simply to expose it. We're not here to fear monger. We're here to say that there's, you know, some things that need to get fixed, and we're all in this together, and that's where we're going to focus, is on the solution.
That sounds good.
Awesome. All right, guys. Great interview. Thank you guys all for being here today, and thank you guys for listening out there. And I'm sure we'll have Scott back sometime in the future.
That sounds good.
All right.
Awesome. All right, everyone.
All right, have a good night.
All day.